Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2024 Mercedes-Benz CLA 250 4MATIC, one of the least expensive Mercedes-Benzes in the lineup, at least if you get it without all the options that this one has. So in that way, we're going to have a good look at it inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive, and then as always, I'm going to tell you what I really think. Okay, my friends, before we get out on the drive, we've got to do some housekeeping. Today's actually a very special day. It's April 8th, 2024, and that sun up there is about ready to go into eclipse mode. And even though I'm here in Arizona, it's not going to be 100% like it goes through the Bible Belt. It's going to screw around with my lighting model today as we do our shoot. So, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad yet. We're going to find out. If things start looking wacky, we'll blame it on the eclipse. So, I will try to get this done before it gets wacky. So since we're saying the word wacky, let's look at the price here, because as tested, our CLA 4MATIC is $61,000 and some change. And I hate to tint that so quickly, but this has a lot of options on it. It starts out at about $46,000 and a lot of options. And so we're going to talk about those. You're going to see those graphics come across your screen as we go throughout the test drive, showing you what those options are, what the price tag attached is. And the first one is the paint. Metallic red. How much do you think that should cost? Well, Mercedes-Benz say $1,750. And yeah, for metallic red paint, that comes standard on a lot of cars, but I digress. Looking at the styling, this did get a well done redesign just a couple of years ago from the original CLA, and I think it was a good one. It looks a lot sleeker, it looks a lot sexier and sportier. It just has better curb appeal to me. It's a little bit longer than that first generation as well, by about 2 inches, give or take. But looking at the front, no mistaking this is a Mercedes-Benz. It's got the grille, it's got the headlights, it's got the eyes. These are LED headlights, of course. Lots of gloss black trim, which goes with the packaging that's on this car. As you can see coming down on the hood shot with the profile, it's got the nice retro style elements there that were first seen way back in the 1950s. I like that Mercedes does that on a number of their cars. Let's look at the wheels. These are pretty nice looking optional wheel on this car, part of the packaging again. Through those wheels you will see cross-drilled rotors and Mercedes-Benz calipers on here. As we come around and look at this angle of the car, the fact that this does have a front-wheel drive stance with the short front, well, it's made up for at the back with this nice, sleek coupe roofline. I mean, this window line comes back. It all sort of blends into this beautiful, sleek, athletic-looking coupe, as they call it. Even though it is 4 doors, they call it a coupe. But looking closer at the rear, you can see there's a nice spoiler element that's molded into the sheet metal. And with the redesign a couple years ago, those sleek LED taillights really do make this car look a little bit less stodgy. Up on the roof, this has a panoramic glass moonroof, which really makes that interior space nice. It doesn't open, but it is a nice touch. The one thing I do have to pick on a couple of things though, looking closer at the rear of the car, it's got some beautifully designed exhaust tips back there that really, they're slender, they're sleek, just like the taillights. It all fits together visually. But the problem is when you zoom in close, they're fake. They're fake. They're not even real. There's no air bluing through those. They are ornaments. They're ornamentation. And $61,000, I just have an aesthetic problem with that. That is the kind of fake boobery that teenagers will go to Pep Boys and stick on their Hondas and their Kias. I don't think that belongs on a Mercedes-Benz. It's beneath the brand. It just is. I just don't understand why Mercedes-Benz is into that kind of silliness. It just, what am I gonna do? The interior of the CLA is, well, it's Mercedes-Benz. If you've been behind the wheel of any Mercedes-Benz in the last 4 or 5 years, this looks identical. In fact, when we look at the dash, this has the dual screen cockpit layout that we see in a lot of Mercedes-Benz vehicles. But I gotta tell you, the minute I got in this car, I thought, well, that looks familiar, but it looks like it's scaled down. And sure enough, it is. On almost all of the other Mercedes-Benz vehicles, it's a 12.3-inch screen, dual cockpit, 2 of those. Here, it's the exact same design, but it's scaled down to 10-inch screens. The dual screen setup works very well. The graphics are beautiful, and ahead of the driver is a fully customizable instrument panel. You can get several different designs on there that you might like. I always like the classic one, the default. The steering wheel on this one is an upgraded steering wheel for this car. It has paddle shifters on it, more of an AMG design. Looking around the interior, we have aluminum trim here, and there's also ambient LED lighting throughout. Now, before I go on talking about any more features, I got to tell you, most everything that we're looking at that I'm talking about and going, wow, this is really neat, is an option. And by now you've seen some of those little option graphics telling you so. The basic interior in here is pretty basic. It's vinyl. It is devoid of a lot of some of the extra flash and beauty that we're looking at here. But what's here is quite beautiful. I've got soft stitch trims on the doors, along with that ambient lighting and the aluminum trims. These seats I'm sitting in are optioned with beautiful two-tone leather. They are heated. That's an option. Not ventilated though. That wasn't optioned. And part of me thinks that, you know, if we're spending upwards around $60,000, that should just be here, whether it's optioned or not. The fact that more money has to be spent to get that at this point is a little bit pushing for me, but I will say that these seats are mostly comfortable. I do have power over here on the door panel, like the typical Mercedes controls, and there are memory settings. There's even memory settings for the passenger side, not something you see often. Over here on the center stack, 3 round vents, very retro for Mercedes-Benz, although these have LED backlighting in them. A full hard control panel down below for HVAC and a number of other things. And then down here in front, a nice place for your phone. This one also has a wireless phone charger down there. And I like the fact that you can see the phone. That's one of my little preferences. I like to be able to see my phone if it lights up or something like that. I don't have to dig it out of a hole. And then behind that, cup holders sitting down low, and then a nice little spot right here with a few additional controls, volume controls for the audio. Now, this back here is not the largest compartment for storage. You can probably squeeze a square tissue box in there if you sort of pushed it in, but it is pretty compact. There are ports down in there to connect your devices though, and it's got that nice little clamshell, miniaturized from some of the larger Mercedes-Benzes. Above my head, as we pointed out on the exterior walk around, this is a full panoramic moonroof. It does not open. It is a fixed panel, but it does have a nice opaque cover, so you don't have to have the sun beating in on you all the time. I was almost ready to give this interior 5 stars for being fantastic, versatile, livable, and all of that until I got back here. And I got to tell you, you do pay a price for this coupe roofline and the fact that this is a compact. This is one of the smallest back seats I think I've sat in years, if I'm honest. So let's talk about this roofline right here. See that? That makes getting in and out of this back seat a little bit of a chore. You have to be very careful. It's not quite like lifting yourself in and out of a Corvette, but it's next on the list of be careful, do it slow, and be deliberative about how you're doing it, that roofline. So let's look at the space that I've got back here. I'm sitting on the floor for all intents and purposes. My knees are perched up, as you can see. And this seat isn't exactly designed in a way that makes you feel like you're held. It's a flat seat. It's got side contouring, but it sort of feels like it tilts forward a little bit. And so it's not necessarily comfortable. And as you can see, the space back here isn't exactly plentiful either. These seats are set for my height, about 5'8", 5'9", depending on the shoes I'm wearing, boots, shoes. And right now I've got literally 1 inch ahead of my knees. If I had somebody sitting up here that was any taller, I'd need to move over. And so it's a pretty tight space back here. Headroom above my head, I've literally got maybe 1 inch if I'm lucky. And if I move my head just right, I can feel my hair brush the roof. And so coupe roofline. The good news is there are some amenities back here, as I would expect at this price. Vents on the back of the center console. There is a USB port down there for charging. And then in the center here is a full down armrest. And it does have little cup holders that pop out here as well. Looking at the trunk, it's actually a pretty good sized trunk for a compact car. It's especially deep. It goes way back underneath that sloping roof line. These seats fold down in a 40-20-40 split so that you can put long, big items in here, maybe skis. So it's a pretty sizable trunk. That is on the upside. Underneath that trunk though, not a spare tire. You're going to find a fix-a-flat kit here. And even if you wanted to have a spare tire, I'm not sure you could put one in there. There's a lot of componentry back there. There's the 12-volt battery in addition to other electronics having to do with the audio system. This is an interior that I am mostly happy with because I like Mercedes-Benz interiors. The quality, the materials is good. The switchgear is good. Some of the best you're going to get in the business, if I'm honest. And the design is very appealing to look at. There's a lot of tech features, a lot of glitz and glam to really enjoy here. The problem with it is almost everything that makes this interior fantastic is an option. And to get it, you have to spend way more than the base price. Let's just start there. Almost $15,000, $16,000 worth of options to get us where we're at. And rear seat comfort, could be a little bit better. So this interior gets 4 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system here is top of the line for Mercedes-Benz. And if you watch my other videos where we've done Mercedes-Benz vehicles, you can see where this is going to go. This is one of the best systems in the business, not only for the feature content that it offers, when it's all optioned in here, but the graphics are absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful to look at. It's easy to work with, getting around and figuring out the menus, finding the settings that you want. And there's a lot of them in there. Is very easy. It's very intuitive. You don't have to sit here for 3 days to figure it out. It is very easy to immediately get into this car, and if you're using Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, it's wireless. It connects right up and everything just works. This one is optioned with the Burmester audio system, which is an expensive option, but it sounds very good. If you're going to get a Mercedes, if you get one option, I would say that this system is one of them. It's really worth the money. The other thing that is well done and optioned here is the 360-degree view monitor. And it has lines on it that move with your steering wheel so you can really see where you're placing the car. Very important if you're parallel parking, for example. You can see what's around you and you can see how close you are to that curb very easily so that you don't curb your wheels. One of my favorite features, again, optional. This is a system that, yes, there's a lot of money spent here, but as it sits, it gets 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, my friends, let's go for a drive. Now, the first thing I always like to talk about is what is motivating us. Under the hood here is a transversely mounted 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. And because we have 4MATIC all-wheel drive, it is directing power to the rear wheels, at least to some degree. It's not rear-wheel drive biased so much as it is front-wheel drive biased, which does have some front-wheel drive characteristics we'll get here to in a moment. It has 221 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, so not the most power you can get from this engine. This is a milder, more everyday tune. It has an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission, which means it's a robotic manual, not a traditional automatic. So the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So we're going to come to a complete stop. We're out in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around. And we're in sport mode. And go. A little bit of lag off the line. And 60. It's relatively quick. I wouldn't call it blindingly fast, but once you get rolling, this transmission does click off the shifts pretty well. There are paddle shifters here, which means that you do have some level of control. And even though this is a DCT, there is a little bit of a delay here in giving you those shifts. It's not quite snap, snap, snap. It's not milliseconds like some of the more sportier cars that have this. It's still tuned for a bit more of a luxury feel. Now, refinement of the engine, okay. Fuel efficiency, 25 city, 35 highway, and 28 combined, and that's about what I got with it this week, 28. So it's a pretty fuel efficient little car, and that's because it is a car, not a big SUV. Refreshing. But what's not refreshing is this transmission. Now, yes, for sporting drives on back roads and going around corners and powering out of them, this DCT is a good thing. But driving around town every day, at home, in your favorite neighborhood, going from stoplight to stoplight, it can be a little bit rough and jinky. It's slow to respond, especially if you're sitting at a stoplight and you let your foot off the pedal and you go to go. Cattle guard. And of course, when you come to a stop, you discover that this has auto start stop. Ba-bing. So when you come to a stop, it's saving gas, it's shutting off the engine. When you let off the pedal, not only does it have to start, but then the transmission has to engage. And so this DCT amplifies the delay you get from the auto start stop system. Because stopping and going with the DCT, you get a little bit of a delay waiting for that clutch to engage. And sometimes if you try to do a maneuver and it's not ready, it has to get its stuff together in order to put it in the right gear. So when it comes to these DCT transmissions, they're always a little bit hinky-jinky, and this one, well, it's hinky-jinky sometimes. It works good most of the time, but there's other times that you just go, I just almost wish it has a regular automatic. And my husband drove the car and he was like, wow, that thing's got a weird transmission. So just another observation. So all in, this is a powertrain that has some qualities, and it has some areas that, well, I wouldn't call them bad things, I would call them lack of refinement. This powertrain gets 3 out of 5 stars. The next part of our conversation is ride, drive, and handling. One of the joys that this car being so compact and not an SUV brings me here is the fact that it's not an SUV, and it's compact, it's low to the ground, it's more of a traditional car, and there's very few cars that get to drive anymore. And so that just brings me joy, sitting down low in a car that's close to the ground. It's got a low center of gravity, and it's not heavy like an electric car. It's not light either, but it's a nice compact car, and it feels like one. But because we're in a Mercedes-Benz, they have tuned this chassis with a level of sophistication. It does have McPherson struts up front though, not a multi-link or double wishbone front suspension, and that is because it's front wheel drive based. And in the rear we do have a multi-link suspension, and that's because this does have cattle guard. Does have the 4MATIC with the rear wheel drive. They really couldn't do a twist beam too easily back there. So we've got the goods. This does not, however, have the aromatic suspension like you might find on other high-end models of Mercedes-Benz. It has a fixed spring ratio and a fixed damper ratio, which is fine because so far in my week with it, I find that they've done a good job of tuning it almost just right. Now, road noise is a little bit elevated here. 61.2 decibels is the measurement that I got on our 70-mile-an-hour test strip, and that's about average. That's almost exactly average. And some of that extra noise does come by way of these tires being a little bit wider and more performance oriented. Wind noise, very low if non-existent. So it's really all about the road noise. And we're out here right now on a pretty noisy patch of road. And so you can probably hear that in our audio. Now, steering feel, it's kind of numb. And because we're doing a front wheel drive car here, I don't know, it just has that feel to it. And torque steer. When we drive it under full power, especially around corners, this chassis still does have torque steer, even though we are directing some of that power to the rear. But with these tires and wheels, thankfully, this does have a pretty good level of grip. And so it can be a fun car out on a back road, a curvy road, and so forth. Now around town, this does have a pretty firm suspension, and with these low profile tires, you really do notice road irregularities, manhole covers, speed bumps, potholes. They can sometimes bring a crashing experience that may be a little bit unpleasant, but for everyday driving out on the road, most of the irregularities, like these cattle guards, come and go without much drama. This chassis gets 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, my friends, we've driven it. We've had a good look at it inside and out. And the last conversation I always like to have about any car is it worth the money? And this is going to be a fun topic on this one because of all the options they piled on this. And it is supposed to be one of the least expensive Mercedes-Benzes you can get, but it kind of really isn't as tested. As tested, we're at $61,000 and some change. That's a lot for this car. I'm just going to say it. This bases out at around $46,000, at which point I go, wow, you know, that might be kind of attractive in the value standpoint. But the problem is almost everything that makes this car absolutely appealing, the interior, the trim, the features, the wheels, the color, all of it's an option. And to get the car up to a point where you go, yeah, this is a Mercedes-Benz, I like it, bang, or $61,000, and that's a problem for me. And just things like this metallic red paint, $1,750. Come on, it's metallic red paint. It's not even like it's a tri-colored, tri-coat pearl with, you know, colored tint, whatever. It's just metallic red. But $1,750, that's what it's going to cost to get you this. And if you look at the Mercedes-Benz website and the colors, almost every color is optional. You get 1 or 2 or 3 colors that are standard, and they're just, you know, the standard, you know, monotone, whatever. So if you want color, you're going to pay for it. So I'm kind of nitpicking a little bit, but that's kind of where I get. I'm looking at $61,000 here, and I'm thinking, yeah, I could have a C-Class. I could get up into a larger Mercedes-Benz that, and aside, is a real Mercedes-Benz. It's got rear-wheel drive. Not that this isn't real, right? It's here. It's got the emblem on it. But I grew up in a world where Mercedes-Benz luxuries, you know, one of the things that makes that it's rear-wheel drive. This is a front-wheel drive car. This is like downgrade for a driving enthusiast. But yeah, we have 4MATIC, yes, but it's still front-wheel drive based. You still have front-wheel drive behavior. You still have I don't mean to beat it to a dead horse, but at this price, I start thinking in that term, right? I want to go up. I want to get something that makes me feel like I'm getting my money's worth, and this does not. At $46,000 base price, you take all of the options away that makes this car really nice as tested, and I'm thinking it's going to be like, you know, any other compact car inside and out for 46 instead of 26 or 30. So, is it a value? I'm going to put value here at 3 out of 5 stars. And one last aside, things like these fake exhaust tips down here are part of my overall judgment there. This is a Mercedes. I shouldn't be having fake things like that. That's well below the brand, I think. I don't know why they do that. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me. I would expect that on some cheap little car, but not this. So 3 out of 5 stars for value. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, 3.8 stars for the review. So proof positive. I try to be objective on these things. Not every Mercedes-Benz I get, I fall head over heels with. Every car gets judged on its own merits, and that's where this is at, 3.8 out of 5 stars. So there you go. If you like what we do, you can see our latest video right there. Better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there. Either way, stay tuned.